Hello, this is Charles, and it's my submission for the contest. This is actually the first time I've recorded Kerbal Space Program video playing. Uh, it's my first time recreating an existing rocket, the Falcon 9, and it's the first time attempting a precision landing both on Kerbin and then on the Mun at the designated target. I used quick saves to be able to control the booster first stage and the second stage to be able to record the separate components for the videos. The boost back phase for the first stage is a little bit like the Falcon 9, but not entirely. It it does the boost back, but then I had to do several other slower minor burns to be able to better control where I landed. The real Falcon 9 only does, I believe, 2 burns as part of the landing, 3 burns as part of the landing process. The first, the boost back burn to either return to the launch site or control where it's going to land in the ocean. The second, to slow down in the atmosphere so that it doesn't get too hot and burn up. And then the third being the suicide burn slash hover slam to slow down the velocity to 0 as it reaches the landing site. Since this was the first time I had ever attempted to land a booster, uh, you'll note that I had to do a lot of fine tuning and a lot more than 3 engine firings. And also, whereas the Falcon 9 has to do a suicide burn, because even a single engine is too powerful when it's that empty to be able to hover. It has to neutralize all the velocity as it reaches the ground. I chose to do a soft land with my engines at a lower throttle, which gave me a little bit more control, especially since this was the first time I had ever attempted this. This is actually my 3rd attempt to land the booster, and I was very happy with getting it this close to the launch pad, so I decided that this was good enough. Here is the second stage of my Falcon rocket launch. Again, loading from the quick save to be able to control both of the crafts at different times. You'll notice that I sped up the footage by twice. That's why the sound gets a little bit faster for the booster at this stage. Uh, I figured that this was the least interesting portion of the flight, the most interesting parts being the landing of the first stage and then the actual landing on the moon itself with the lander. Unlike the real Falcon 9, I am not a good enough player to be able to get into orbit on a single engine burn. My strategy is the, I guess, lazy method of getting an apogee that's out of the atmosphere, turning off the engines and coasting up to the apogee, then firing the engines again to circularize the orbit. There was a minor glitch in the recording software, so it didn't capture the creation of the maneuver node trying to get to the moon. I'm still not entirely sure what a direct throw consists of. I, so I just did the best I could think of, which was to use the second stage of the Falcon 9 to get as close as possible and then detach the lander and use the lander's engine to complete the rest of the burn. One thing I had to do was an inclination change of the burn because I was coming in around the moon's equator and the target is in the northern hemisphere. So I needed to adjust my orbit so that at some point it would pass under the lander. After entering the lunar orbit, I realized that my orbit didn't actually pass close enough over the site, so I had to change my inclination again. This was a bit of an expensive burn, relatively speaking. It would have made more sense to do this in the original mid-course correction phase, but I wasn't skilled enough to notice it at the time since this is my first attempt at a precision landing. Now that we're on the way down, it's time for the, I guess, glamour shots of the lander itself. I noticed from the design that it seemed to be six-sided, and so I tried to position the solar panels in the correct spots, as well as putting the 7 different science experiments in positions matching the diagram that was shown as part of the forum post. For the rest of the landing, it's going to be in real time without being sped up after the fact. I did use time warp and physical time warp a little bit just to speed things along, but there won't be any post-production speeding up. When I noticed that I was going to be landing in the shadow, I took more direct control of the lander to neutralize the horizontal velocity, and so try and come down where I was able to see. Again, for the landing, this is not a suicide burn or a hover slam type landing. It's a much more gradual, slow descent. It's not as optimal just because it requires more fuel, but it enabled me to be able to make the landing in the first place. Now that I landed successfully, I decided to time warp forward a little bit until the sun was in a better position to be able to see the lander, at which point I zoomed out to make sure I was in the correct location. And while I'm sure that others are able to do much more precise landings, I was very happy with how close I managed to get to the target, especially considering that I had never done anything like this before. I then ran all of the science experiments. Unfortunately, they're duplicates, just to make them all fit and look like the equipment on the diagram for the actual lander. And there's a bit of a cut in the video here because I hadn't realized that I could show my coordinates on screen in the map screen before. So I came back and did another glamour shot, just rotating around the lander, and then I cut away to the map to show the actual landing coordinates.